My name is Aaron and our entry to Civil Service Data Challenge aims to reduce benefit fraud and error associated with self-employment. The origins of my idea came from my experiences working for the DWP at Salford Job Centre, where I was on the front of house team and my role included dealing with benefit queries and processing universal credit claims. Universal credit, or UC, is a means-tested benefit that can be claimed by those out of work and those in work. During the pandemic, the volume of UC claims increased dramatically. As a result, the DWP introduced changes to process claims quicker by removing certain checks, such as face-to-face identity verification interviews. Consequently, fraud and error increased greatly from £1.7 billion in 2020. For clarification, fraud is where an individual deliberately misleads the DWP in order to gain a greater benefit award, whereas error is where claimants inadvertently provide incorrect information leading to overpayment. UC is reliant on claimants' self-reporting information. This can cause a problem for self-employed claimants who are required to report their income and expenses each month, with the UC system using their profits to calculate their award. This isn't a problem for those who are paid under the PAYE system because their earnings are automatically transferred to the DWP from HMRC via the RTI feed, which is real-time information. So there's a potential problem for self-employed claimants who may not understand how to correctly report their income and expenses, or those who may deliberately underreport their income in order to gain an increased benefit award. As you can see from the graph, of the four main areas of overpayments due to fraud and error, overpayment due to self-employment fraud and error is the greatest. And we estimate of the £1.4 billion fraud and error, £250 million comes from self-employed construction workers. This is based on the number of self-employed UC claimants and the percentage of self-employed who work in construction. So our solution will look to address some of this by sharing HMRC data with the DWP to enable DWP to more accurately calculate benefit awards.
Thanks, Aaron. So clearly there's a sizable problem here, and to confirm it, these are quotes we recorded from senior DWP leaders Neil Cooling and Peter Schofield when we began our research and our investigations. To highlight the problem a little more, we've prepared an illustration.
This is Steve, the subcontractor. He is single-handedly building Britain back better, one brick at a time, making the world a better place with his skills, charm and good looks. This is who Steve thinks he is. And this is the real Steve, a hard-working and lovable self-employed builder who follows the work from one site to the next. Right now, he's working for Honest Colin Construction on a high-rise development. Honest Colin pays Steve monthly and follows HMRC's processes, submitting those earnings via the Construction Industry Scheme. However, to supplement his income, Steve also claims universal credit. He logs onto the DWP's online portal to declare his income, but decides to understate it and enters a much lower figure. With no further checks in place, the DWP pays his universal credit. Steve is living large. After all, he is saving the world.
So that's the problem. But what if HMRC and the DWP could combine their collective knowledge about steam? How would that improve the situation?
It's payday at Honest Colin Construction, and Steve's pay packet has come through. Steve submits his earnings to the DWP as usual. But with the new data exchange solution in place, that number is checked against HMRC's records and a discrepancy is detected. Steve and his DWP team are contacted by fraud and error analysts. At this point, Steve can revise his submission or dispute the error. But crucially, both DWP and HMRC are now aware of the discrepancy and can work to resolve it.
The key to our solution and our proposal is the sharing of HMRC's construction industry data with the DWP. The construction industry scheme is used by building contractors to deduct money from subcontractors' wages as advance payments towards tax and national insurance. The contractor also provides the associated earnings data with HMRC where it's stored. What we're proposing is that that earnings data is used to cross-check the self-declared income submitted by UC claimants and to detect any discrepancy. It's important to emphasise here that we're not suggesting, our proposal does not suggest an automated decision to stop benefit payments. The detection of a discrepancy triggers a referral process and an investigation, and in that way doesn't risk detriment to the claimant. For our next steps and our pilot scheme, I'd like to pass over to Mark.
Thank you. So as you've seen in the video, our solution contains a data link, but that's not the innovation. The innovation is about creating and sharing subcontractors' self-employed earnings and giving that insight to HMRC and DWP about how that can be used and taken forward to reduce fraud and error in the future. So in developing our solution, we've engaged with HMRC, DWP, and the Cabinet Office data teams to ensure that we can get a data link between the two. And this has allowed us to realise our goal of trying to get senior management buy-in within those organisations. We're not proposing anything that could be considered detrimental to a person's data or a person's requirements. So what we are proposing is that we're not going to do anything that would breach any ethical considerations or breach any GDPR regulations. And as with any existing fraud and referral system, there are legal gateways in place, and we intend to use those legal gateways to make sure that the data of individuals who are honestly claiming is protected and the taxpayers' money is saved by only paying the universal credit to those that are entitled to it. We're in the advanced stages of undertaking a proof of concept, and we have requested a data exchange from HMRC through DWP. We're intending to do this into a real-world scenario to allow us to complete and to check the discrepancies that were in the video actually exist within the data sets that we've got. We'd then like to move into a pilot. And of course, solving the problem isn't just about the data. We need to also understand the impact this might have on DWP's workload. So we need to understand how this would affect the people such as caseworkers and call centre staff. And this is where the pilot phase really becomes relevant for us in understanding those. Once we've achieved the proof of concept and we've then gone through the full pilot study, we can move to full implementation, which will allow us to realise this change. And that really is the crux of our idea. It changes us. It's a step change from a reactive organisation that checks and challenges payments after the event to a proactive organisation that can stop those claims and that fraudulent activity before it even occurs. Our idea is that prevention is always better than a cure. We can further scale this solution by looking at accumulating data sets, building on data sets, and allowing those to be used through other government departments. And some of those ideas that we've done and described are on board. And we can scale those and we can use them and use that data feed across government departments to allow us to save more money and reduce error and fraud. Let me explain one of those. I'll explain point 3, which is the HGV drivers. And we've developed a system that we can look at how a HGV driver's income declared to HMRC and DWP matches the hours that he may have done within a year. So for instance, a HGV driver that on his tachograph has done 2,000 hours, but declares through HMRC and DWP that his income is £10,000 a year, is likely to be understating his income. I'd like to hand you over to Liz now that will conclude and ask questions.
Thank you. So I hope you're as excited as we are about the solution and the fact that we've identified a way to look at one area of the self-employed economy. But we have also identified other areas as well, and we're happy to talk about that. Reducing the amount of fraud and error that goes in overpayments benefits us as civil servants in terms of what we can achieve, the projects we get to work on. Having that insight gives us a tool that we can use to better focus our effort. It benefits us as taxpayers in terms of ensuring that our money goes to those who need it. And it benefits us as service users to, one, so we don't end up in a situation where we've had an overpayment and sort of have to pay that back, but also in terms of the services that we get from government. I'm happy to discuss all this more, and we really welcome your comments and questions, and for the rest of the team to sort of join for the answers. Thank you.
Firstly, can I just say how pleased I am to see how Steve has evolved since the semi-final. He's looking great. Looking great. I did have a question to kick us off, actually, which is aside from the support you'll get from NTT and the judges to take your idea forward if you're the winning team, have you given any thought to how you would use the £50,000 cash? What would you do with that?
We've done some limited thinking about the next steps in terms of we need to get, for the one solution, the data to actually look at that and explore. And there's a lot of momentum in HMRC and DWP to sort of make that happen. Kevin's been taking us through the data sharing gateway with Cabinet Office. So potentially the money doesn't need to go there. So in terms of where that would go, I think our desire is to ensure that we extract the maximum benefit once we get that data, so that we sort of work with the experts to ensure that our insights, we're identifying what we should be identifying. And then also to continue doing some of that mapping about, well, what other data is there and what actually is needed. Like if you were going to create a model for data collection in other sectors of the economy or supplement existing data sets like the driving data, what needs to be collected? And how does it need to be presented so that you can actually match it up and the reporting isn't, 6 months out of date, or the way that it's presented is in different orders so that you can't easily match individuals. But Kevin, do you have any additional comments?
Yeah, the nature of the data that we're looking to share in this initial pilot is HMRC to DWP. So that is a closed data set as such. But as Liz says, that's exactly what we want to do. We want to explore the other parts of the self-employed economy.
Okay, great, thank you.
Can I, so congratulations, really great presentation. And like Vicky, it's great to see how it's moved on. But my question is about what do you see are the challenges in terms of getting this operationalised into day-to-day DWP process through caseworking?
So Natalie is on the remotely who works at DWP and can perhaps offer some comments in terms of where DWP is with the organisation, and Mark, if you want to talk about HMRC.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
You can.
Okay, great. So in terms of DWP, I think one of the things for us to find out is how quickly can we check this discrepancy. So the HMRC data work in tax month, and DWP data's assessment periods, and at different periods in time. So we might not be able to do it like right after 1 month. We might need a period of like 3 months or something. It depends a bit on the delays that might be on HMRC side as well. So if contractors submit their returns a bit late, that will all feed into it as well. So as a result, if it turns out we need a 3-month period before we can flag Steve, we can't build that into the universal credit system as is, like, for example, used for the RTI feed, which is the PAYE information that comes in and is automatically calculated for the payment demand. So it might be more of a sort of fraud detection method and maybe less of an integrated calculation into UC, but we'll have to see based on the results from the pilot.
Okay, so from the HMRC side, as Natalie said, we're talking about checking the data. We're not going to make sure it's down to every penny. It'll be down to a range. Is it 1,700 or 300? There's a big range to check on that. And that download that we're hoping to be able to do from HMRC to DWP should be automated. It should be a monthly bounce over of exchange of information as it does at the moment through the PAYE system.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I mean, very well done. Great presentation. The thing that excited me was seeing like the other areas that you're like now thinking about beyond all this. And I think the thing that's exciting is that this is like a wedge, and you kind of, in classic kind of startup fashion, you find a niche and then you can expand. And I think this whole project could be moved into lots of different areas around data sharing, which I think is extremely exciting. And there was a little part of me that was like, why are we not doing this already? This is kind of a classic kind of thing. And so I guess you've obviously thought a lot about the delivery stuff, right? I guess my challenge is like how quickly, like I wasn't quite sure from the presentation where you'd actually got with the pilot. Like it said 125 touch points, but it'd be good to understand like what data has been shared so far, where has that got to, and then when do you think this could actually happen? And then I think we, like it'd be great to like go even faster.
So I think Kevin can talk about the pilot. I think in terms of the use cases, which we can elaborate on, and I think Aaron has done the thinking on that. That's one area where we've identified it because we've been looking and we've been trying to see, well, okay, construction's a section of the economy. What else is there? And actually, what else is an easy win for government because it's government data, But there's other data sets in insurance that might have value for sort of fraud and error. But that's sort of because we've come together centrally and looked at the problem. In terms of the pilot, it's very much about utilizing this data set because that in itself has value. And so we're trying to work that data sharing gateway through Cabinet Office. And I think, Kevin, you've been leading that.
So yes, we've been through the initial request, and that goes through a front door team at HMRC, and we've put that, but there is a process where that is impacted against a number of different areas within each department. So we're at that stage where we've made the initial request. We were really hoping to have some data exchange before the final, but we haven't achieved that. There is also the governance side of things because we have to use the Digital Economy Act for the data gateway. So we've had to go through the governance and review board situation for that. We are at the stage where HMRC are on board, and we now have to fully impact that with DWP as the next stage. And it will be a phased approach. It will be a test and learn of an initial data population. And then from that, we'll be able to work out the scale of the next phase, if you like.
Do you think there needs to be more focus, perhaps, in the Cabinet Office or whatever, to kind of move this stuff quicker? Like, do you feel like that those processes have not been good enough or quick enough?
I work in that data piloting area, and I'd love it to move much quicker. Yes.
Just a note, you've got just over a minute and a half left.
All right.
Sorry.
Quick question from me then. Look, fantastic presentation. It's an amazing proposition. £250 million a year, I think you said, on fraud and error of the construction sector. How much of that do you think we could reduce applying this approach?
I would say, Aaron, you did the initial calculations, and then potentially Natalie might be able to offer more detail. But Aaron, do you want to explain where the figure came from?
Well, I calculated it. Yeah, we looked at the total number of self-employed workers, Then looked at the percentage who were in construction, it was roughly 17%. So that 250 million is 17% of the 1.4 billion total self-employed fraud and error.
And then Natalie, do you want to sort of elaborate in terms of what we might identify and achieve?
I think this is really difficult to guess without having seen the data. So it could be anything from 12 million to 100 million, depending. And I think the big thing that we don't know is how many people are in both of those schemes, on universal credit and the construction industry scheme. And out of those, how many just have the one job that we can check against the contractor's earnings. So we don't know how big that population is, but we think it's probably only going to be small, like 20% or so, hence the lower number.
This proposition that we are having would act as a deterrence to further stop the fraud. So it's not, the value is not just like what we are getting now. It's like in future we would be protecting public money. So that's the value proposition.
I think just to add to that, just quickly.
2 seconds.
There's potential that there are people that are claiming universal credit, but someone is working in construction under their identity. And so there's other little things that within this single data set will be identified. And that again could bring in an unknown number of whatever.
Thank you.
Many.
Being subcontracted.
They could go on for hours, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But now you can all, thank you so much. What a brilliant pitch that was. You can go and relax. Go and get yourself a well-deserved cup of coffee.